Hello and welcome to another Sabres Realm podcast session hosted by Sabres Noise. Today we have with us Nick Darrow, another hockey enthusiast. I'm Brian Sateski, another writer for the SabresNoise.com website. Today we'll be talking about a few various topics, with the first being Jimmy Vesey and where we see him landing in a few days here. Nick, what are your thoughts?
Well, once again, thank you for having me on your show. Appreciate it. Hello out there to all you listeners. I think the Jimmy Vesey saga is going to continue beyond Monday. His agent came out and said all reports are false as of Saturday. So that leaves us with how many teams? 6, including the Sabres in that.
Yeah, why don't we list those off? We're looking at the Leafs, Bruins, Rangers, Devils, Sabres, of course, and the Blackhawks. Now,
The Devils is a weird one, I thought.
I thought the Devils is a weird one too. They just
Why did that
got
come out?
Taylor Hall, who's a left winger.
Yeah.
They have Mike Camilleri, who's a solid scoring left winger.
Yeah.
So to VC, he wants to play top 6 minutes, but they have 2 top 6 left wingers. So in my opinion, and it sounds like you're in agreement with me, Nick, they're the low man out of the totem pole in terms of likelihood of being able to get VC signed.
I think it's more going back to what the agent said. The reports are false. I think that's what it comes down to. I don't think the Devils are in on it.
Right. So let's keep going through the list here. So the Devils, honestly, I think they're the lowest chance of those 6 teams. Let's jump over to the Rangers. So the Rangers are an interesting one. I mean, a lot of people think there's a lot of hype around Madison Square Garden, playing at the Garden. They do have I would say a team that's able to make the playoffs on a regular basis. Now, there's an argument that they're in decline, but they do have Henrik Lundqvist as the goalie, and they certainly have some talent on both the forward and D corps, even though they have some tough contracts that they're currently working with. So in my opinion, the Rangers don't really make much sense either, just because of all their cap challenges. I mean, BCE waited this long to sign with the team that he wants to sign with. He wants to get paid. I just feel like they're not going to be a good fit based on cap space and based on, some of those heavy contracts Dan Girardi and Mark Stahl that they're going to have trouble getting rid of over the next couple of years. What do you think, Nick, about the Rangers?
I think everything you said is very true. I think the Rangers are definitely going to be declining. If it's not visible this year in the standings, it's going to be visible next year. I think Henrik Lundqvist is not getting younger, so it doesn't make sense for him to want to go to a team that's going to decline. I think if anything, it's a short-term move for him to say, okay, I'm going to win the Stanley Cup this year. But I don't think they're a great candidate either, though.
Okay, so yeah, that makes sense. So basically, at least in our minds, we've rationalized essentially Devils and Rangers are kind of out of the mix. Yeah. Obviously we don't know what's in his head, but that's our thought. What makes sense from a practicality standpoint. Those 2 teams seem to be on the bottom of the list. Now it gets a little trickier. Leafs, Bruins, Blackhawks, and Sabres, and there seems to be ties to the Sabres in a sense with Jack Eichel, ties to the Bruins. What is he, friends with Kevin Hayes? And then
from there.
And he's from there.
Yeah.
And the Leafs, what is his dad, like some type of coach or works for them in some sense. So there's obviously connections there. And then the last one, the Blackhawks. The Blackhawks is interesting because there is a top 6 left wing role that he could slide into with some really talented players there. And of all the teams on this list, they're by far the most ready, stepping into next season of competing for a cup. So I don't know, Nick, what team did you want to kind of focus on? Do you want to think the Blackhawks before we get to the rest of them?
Let's make a case for the Blackhawks here. If you're playing on any team right now and you're an unrestricted free agent, how could you say no to the Blackhawks? They have 3 cups since 2010. You have a potential, if you're Jimmy Vesey, to play with Kane.
Or Taves, depending on where they want to slot him in.
There's so many potential like dreams coming true here in Chicago.
I think the cap is their biggest problem, like the Rangers, because of the contracts they just gave Taves and Kane.
But they also freed up some salary.
They did free up some salary, so it's not as big as a problem as the Rangers have. But I think that's one of those, if VC does well and then wants to, cash in after a successful season or a couple successful seasons with the Blackhawks, he might not have a lucrative contract following as much as he would have made with a team like the Leafs or the Sabres.
Right.
But that's just the thought. So I personally would consider at this point in time the Hawks are certainly a challenger for his rights. And we'll after we're done with this, we'll go ahead and rank them kind of 1 through 6. 1 being the highest, 6 being the lowest on what our thoughts are.
I think we know what 5 and 6 is. Already.
Yeah, 5 and 6. That's the Devils and Rangers. Devils, I would say, being 6. Rangers 5. But the rest of them we'll get through. So why don't we end with the Sabres? So now we have the Leafs and the Bruins. Who do you want to focus on first? Leafs or Bruins?
Let's talk about the Leafs.
Okay, our favorite.
Our favorite team, right?
All right.
Wait, we're Sabres fans, not Leafs fans.
Yeah.
I forgot about that for a second.
So the Leafs are interesting. They have a ton of cap space.
Tons.
They have a ton of young potential. Matthews, they just drafted. Marner's been lighting it up. Not Nylander, not Alex, but William over there has been lighting it up.
The other guy.
What's his name? Kadri is, I would say, poised for potential. Van Riemsdyk is a solid player to play with. So they have a lot of young talent on that team. They have a well-respected coach, a new, kind of head office there. So there's a lot going on in Leafs, and
a solid goalie too now.
And a solid goalie with Anderson being picked up. Plus, the relationship with his dad. So my thought with the Leafs is, does VC want to play under the pressure of the Toronto media, especially after all this kind of backstory drama that's been going on? And does he want to be that kid who's 23 years old, still doing what his parents says, and say, play for Toronto because your dad works for them? And same argument for Boston could be made there, because I know that they've been pushing him, or we've heard reports of them pushing him towards that team because he's from there. But Nick, what are your thoughts?
I don't know. I think, it comes down to his choice in the end. And I don't think, if I'm thinking in his head, when he was younger, he was probably a Bruins fan.
Right.
Makes sense.
Yeah, he wears Joe Thornton's number when he played for the Bruins.
So, in my eyes, if I'm thinking like this, I don't think he goes to the Leafs because they're a rival.
Mm-hmm.
Now, his father, I think, kind of changes that a little bit, but I don't know if it changes it enough.
Right.
I think it's still between the Sabres and Bruins, I think.
Okay, so you consider Leafs in contention, but maybe not the best fit, at least from our, outside understanding.
Yeah.
So
but, again, money talks.
Right, that's
but
true.
At the same time, though, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think he can get the rookie maximum. If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
so,
rookie maximum wherever he goes. It's just what happens when that contract expires.
Right.
That's when it's, hey, are you on this team or this team, to see what cap they have available for you to take advantage of.
I think every team has, $950,000.
Right, plus bonuses. Yeah. We don't need to get into that too much.
Yeah.
So Leafs, possibly in contention, maybe not a front runner, but they're up there.
Yeah.
What about the Bruins? So the Bruins, hometown team. I mean, can you imagine, right? In my shoes, I wouldn't believe how lucky of a person I would be if I grew up watching the Sabres play, and then I get to play for the team I grew up watching. That would be phenomenal.
Let's talk to Justin Bailey about that one.
right.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, from Williamsville.
Yeah.
Now,
kids living in dream up there.
Yep. Now, with that being said, of these teams, the Bruins, they're kind of a hodgepodge, I would say, or a mix and match of, hey, are they going to start improving, or are they going to decline? They've recently had a lot of high-end draft picks, although some of their picks have been a little unorthodox. Seems like they were reaching on a couple of the picks that they made, but they do have some talent in the system. They have, one of the best centers in the world with Bergeron. They have a solid goalie in Rask. Chara on the back end. I mean, I know he's not a spring chicken anymore here, but he's still a really solid defenseman especially if they give him limited minutes. So, there is a competitive team there. Like I said, there's an argument to be made both for them on the rise or them declining. Does Vesey have a fit there, and do they have a top 6 left wing position open for him?
I think there is definitely. I think every team will make room for Vesey, except maybe the Blackhawks. I think the Blackhawks are so stacked that he'll fit in wherever the team has an opening at this point, just because, they're the Blackhawks and they'll make everything work the way they want to, I think. But I think the Bruins definitely could potentially open up a top 6, probably maybe even top 3. Does it make sense? I don't think so. I think they're on the decline, along with the Rangers. I think they've missed the playoffs 2 years in a row, and their only big signing this offseason.
Did they miss the playoffs 2 years in a row?
They missed 2 years in a row.
I didn't know that.
And both years, if I'm not mistaken, came down to the last week of the season. This year, it came down to a game against the Ottawa Senators on the last day of the year. Rask got sick. They lost 5-0.
Wow.
I'm
glad to have you on the show today. Thanks.
I was so happy just listen to that game on the radio. I was going nuts.
So Boston, it's going to be a personal decision on that matter then.
I think so.
So definitely, there's certainly likelihood that he could sign there. I mean, there's going to be a lot of, almost like a childhood dream that he'd be looking at there. Mm-hmm. And then, let's, for this topic at least, let's end with the Sabres. So the Sabres, we went out of our way to acquire, the rights to sign him in advance, and he still hasn't signed with us. Mm-hmm. But obviously, that action should show him we have the interest, right? And Tim Murray being Tim Murray, he will give him that max deal. There's no questions asked on that.
Yeah.
We flew out, Terry Pagula, I believe, right, to meet with him.
There was a time they flew out to meet with him.
And, we've shown him everything we can. Jack Eichel, he'd be playing with somebody he already has chemistry with, which would be phenomenal. And he's the perfect type of player for that role. Yeah. Eichel, Vesey, Reinhart. So you have him as that power winger role, Reinhart, the playmaker, and then you have Eichel. I mean, that's a dream line. Now, we have the top 6 slot open. We showed him the city. He's playing with one of his best friends right now, but he still hasn't signed. So in my opinion, that really is cause for concern. Maybe the ties to Boston or the ties to Toronto are pulling at him too much. Maybe he just wants to hear him out, and then he does end up signing with the Sabres 2 days after the 15th.
Yeah.
But as of right now, I would say, I do have a little bit of a worry that we're not his first choice at this point in time. But Nick, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are, and I'm going to compare this, and I'm sure maybe some of you have heard this comparison before. I compare it to picking a college. When you're a junior in high school, senior in high school, you don't pick the first college that they, approaches you or you see on the internet. Okay, you go out and you shop around. You go see, okay, what is the best fit for me? You don't pick the first thing you see. It's like picking a car too. Same thing. You don't buy the first car that catches your eye. You want to shop around at other dealerships. You want to shop around to see what's out there. So I think it's the same thing with Vesey. This is his first job, essentially, in a pro league. He wants to pick what's best for him. I think it's, we're biased because we're Sabres fans. We live in Buffalo. We're very biased, I think. But I think all that, in consideration, I think it makes the most sense for Vesey to be here because you look at our potential. You have Eichel and Reinhart, and as you said, he could play on a line with Reinhart and Eichel, or he could play with O'Reilly and Ennis.
Or Okposo, too.
Or Okposo. So there's so many different situations he could be in, and kind of like Toronto is on the upswing.
Right. So let's break it down here so we can get into our other topics. We want to make sure we get you all the content for today's session.
Yeah.
So with that, how would you rate the teams that we listed, those top 6 teams, in order from best to worst, best being number 1, worst being number 6. So we already talked about 5 and 6. I'm thinking Devils are 6 of the likely, so bottom of the pack.
Yeah.
Rangers 1 step above them.
Yep.
I'm thinking that the Leafs are probably 4.
Yeah, I would agree.
I'm thinking the Blackhawks, the Bruins, and the Sabres are 1, 2, 3, but in what order? I think that's the hardest challenge. In my mind, I'm thinking, and it pains me to say it, that it's not the Sabres at number 1 in terms of likelihood right now. What do you think, Nick? What do you think are 1, 2, 3? Let's just give an opinion, and everybody can chime in with their own thoughts.
Sure. I think number 3. I believe in my eyes. I'm gonna pretend I'm Jimmy. Okay. I think the Bruins are number 3 on my list.
Bruins are number 3. So Sabres, Blackhawks 1 and 2. Do you think the Sabres are 1? Or you think the Blackhawks are 1?
If I'm Jimmy Vesey, I think I pick the Blackhawks.
Blackhawks. All right. Yeah, I'll agree with that. I think that's a reasonable assessment. Obviously, we laid out our thoughts and argument, and I'm sure some of you have differing opinions, which we would love to hear in the comment section.
And hopefully next week we have something else.
Hopefully next week we have, the prediction of him signing with us would be ideal, but we'll have to, wait and see just a few more days what happens. Okay, so trades. So basically on a regular basis with these podcasts, I'm thinking it's good to, get our creative caps on and start thinking about what targets around the league might be worth acquiring, and at the same time, something that we wouldn't have to put out some type of ridiculous overpayment for. Now, we are going to suggest some higher end players, so obviously it's going to take a decent package to be able to get them. But it's not like we're suggesting, hey, let's go after Connor McDavid every week here, right?
Wait, why not?
Well, okay, we'll save that for another day. Good topic. Now, so on our list of trade targets today, and we welcome your feedback on our thoughts as well as any additional targets you'd like to see us acquire. But on our docket is going to be Ryan McDonough of the New York Rangers, Evgeny Malkin, or Gino as he's known as, of the Pittsburgh Penguins, and Jeff Skinner. So I think we're going to go out of order here. Let's start with Malkin. He's just coming off a Stanley Cup win, so he's pretty much done it all with the Penguins. And
the national level.
and does he really want to be always in Sidney Crosby's shadow as the number 2 center? Maybe he does. I mean, he obviously has had a ton of success there. I've heard multiple articles referencing that he loves the city. But you never know. He might be open to a trade, be willing to be the guy moving forward, maybe take a mentorship role over Jack Eichel as he becomes kind of the successor to him in the future. So Malkin, it's going to take a heck of a lot to get him. Now, Pittsburgh is at the cap. I think they're actually over the cap right now. So cap is a consideration that can work a little bit in our favor, although we're fairly close, but we're going to need to give up some salary to get his contract. Nick, what do you think it takes to even be in the ballpark of getting a player of Malkin's caliber?
Well, I think you need to have a nice bundle of players involved with these kind of trades. I think you need to sweeten the pot up here and there with a few things. I think you need to give them something to replace Malkin with.
So are you suggesting a center?
Suggesting a center.
What center are you suggesting?
Something that I think I'm gonna get destroyed for saying. I think
O'Reilly?
No, I think Reinhart.
You think Reinhart?
Yeah. I'm gonna get destroyed for that one, but I'll say it. I think Malkin probably is a better player than Reinhart.
He is. I don't think there's any disagreement there.
I think even you might be able, on a really good day, do that 1-for-1 with, depending on the situation. Because you could throw it in their face of, hey, you have a lot of cap issues right now. We'll take them. Here's Reinhart.
Well, let's talk about that. So again, we couldn't do that just because that would blow out our cap. I mean, we have more room than Pittsburgh does, but Malkin carries a 9.5, I think, hit, and that's more than what we have without even signing Ristolainen. So we definitely need to give up a high-value player.
But we can do that in another trade, though.
We can what?
We can always do that in another trade, though.
I mean, we could, but that'd be dismantling the roster.
I wouldn't say dismantling, but I think you could buy out and trade some other contracts.
It's possible. So let's talk about it a bit.
For the record, I'm a Reinhart fan.
Yeah, I know you are. We're definitely Reinhart fans. He's awesome. And he is awesome, which means that he has trade value, right?
Yeah, that's why I threw him in there, because he used to be a center.
He used to be a center. He's been playing wing, and it seems like we're playing him wing moving forward.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, I don't think Reinhart makes sense, at least as the only piece, because then we still have Riley and Eichel, and Malkin plays center. Those three players, none of them should be on your third line. So, in my opinion, if we made a trade for Malkin, Eichel's staying, so it leaves O'Reilly as the trade bait.
I think, though, same thing with Reinhart. Malkin's played wing before many times. He's played on the same line as Crosby.
Yeah, it's pretty rare, though. They do this stack line. It's not common that they do it.
That's happened quite a few times, though, I'm sure. Usually at the end of the, when they're trying to push for a good goal.
Right, when they push for, I've seen that at the end of the game. But typically speaking, when they roll their lines, he is not with Crosby. He's centering his own line. And I wouldn't want to take away a player of Malkin's skill off the center. Like, he is a pinnacle top-line center on 28 teams in the league right now. So I wouldn't want him to play the off wing. If anything, if the idea was to train Reinhart, I think that Malkin takes over as number 1C. O'Reilly gets moved to his wing if we wanted to keep O'Reilly. But I think that it's really like we're going to be up against the cap or pretty close to the cap after the Ristolainen contract signing that. So we have $9.5 million over the cap then at that point. Like,
you think O'Reilly's the better?
I think O'Reilly makes more sense to trade out over Reinhart just because of the position they play and the cap hit that O'Reilly has. And it actually, it makes Pittsburgh younger too, which they need.
Well, both trades do.
Because Malkin is older, so he brings some veteran leadership, some winning experience. So like O'Reilly, he hasn't won a Stanley Cup. Sure. Malkin has, and you're bringing that to the Sabres. So let's, I guess, not to focus on one player too much, but I think this is a really good debate right now between us.
Sure.
If you were building a Reinhart package, and I don't think that Reinhart on his own is enough, what would you add to that? And then on the flip side, if you were building a O'Reilly package, I don't think he's enough either. What would you add to that?
I don't think we need to add much to the Reinhart trade. I don't think we need to at all. I think if anything, we're adding maybe another player, maybe another draft pick. I don't think we're adding much to it, but I think we send them over prospects as well. And,
I think we need to clear some cap too. It could be like a not pinnacle player. It could be like a Molson if we need to clear some cap.
I think that'd be
like Molson, Reinhart, and a first or something like that.
I don't know about first, but I think a second would do it.
Okay, all right. So that'll be interesting to hear feedback on. What about O'Reilly?
Well, with O'Reilly, you gotta, I think, give up a little bit more because I think with Reinhart being so young, I think he's got a lot of upside, and he could be potentially another O'Reilly in the future. You never know. So I think with O'Reilly, I think you give up him. I think you could consider a first-round pick maybe with that. And then I think you need to give up a prospect along with that.
So he is younger, and his cap hit is a little bit lower, so that does play in our favor.
Yeah.
And you're giving up a first, so O'Reilly plus a first plus a prospect. I mean, in my opinion, I don't think the prospect needs to be like a top-end one, considering what we're already giving up. Mm-hmm. What do you think for the prospect? Like, what prospect do you think you'd have to give up in that package as well?
I think It's hard. There's a lot. I feel like we have a deep prospect pool, so there's like so many.
I mean, you could do, if we're not looking at a top end one, you could do like maybe a Will Carrier or somebody like that.
Yeah. What about Hudson Fasching?
Yeah, that makes sense. Fasching first, Riley for Malkin.
I mean,
because he's not a top. I mean, I know I would say at one point in time, GMTM was pretty high on him, but
as we all were.
As we all were. But after seeing him play a little bit, I mean, he certainly has the power forward mentality, but I don't feel like he has the NHL, ability to put up points like we hope he would. Not saying he can't. He's still young, got plenty of time.
Well, and maybe he did score in his first NHL.
Right. Banking on that potential, though, is probably, that sweetening part of that deal. So Fasching, Riley in a first for Malkin, or Reinhart and a second and Molson for Malkin. If I was the Pittsburgh, I'd probably be more inclined to look at the O'Reilly deal, in my opinion, based on that, because O'Reilly would really be a solid, second line center behind Crosby. Yeah. And he would help take off. Like Sisney does a ton of defensive draws. O'Reilly would help to alleviate that quite a bit. So that's really good. Awesome start here. I like that. So the other two targets, McDonough and Skinner. Let's start with McDonough. So Ryan McDonough, top 2 left-handed D. We want that. I know we traded for Kulikov. I know we have McCabe, who has the potential to move up. Risto has the potential to be a top 1D. He might not be there yet, but he's certainly going to get there. I think he has all the tools to become an elite first-line right-handed D, and I'd love to find a solid partner to play with him. And like I said, McCabe or Kulikov, hey, you never know. They could work out, especially McCabe. I really like him. But hypothetically, if we're going out and targeting somebody who would be considered a top-line left-handed D, I think Ryan McDonough could be an option. He has a reasonable cap hit, $4.7 million for the next few seasons or couple seasons. He's the captain of the Rangers, and they're due for a change. They need to offload some of their contracts. Now, this isn't a bad contract of theirs. The Girardi one and the Stahl one are, but they do have some, defensive prospects, and obviously he has some value, and they need to get younger. They need to get some prospects. So I think in order to get McDonough, we need to give up potential. We might need to give back, we might have to throw in somebody like
Nelson, maybe?
Yeah, Casey Nelson. We might have to throw in like a Gergensons, but we would be looking at, maybe a first high-end prospect and then like a proven NHLer with some potential still to get better as time goes on.
I want to throw something out there.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is a what-if situation with Ristolainen, I think, because he's still not signed. What if we don't sign him? What if there's something that's holding him back from signing? I'm thinking, do you think it's enough to do a 1-for-1 trade with those two?
No. So the reason I say that, I like that thinking, and I would be open to the discussion of Risto for another thing like that. But the challenge here is if we traded Risto straight up for McDonough, and that could be, in the ballpark of possible. Mm-hmm. In the ballpark, not saying it is, but in the ballpark. Mm-hmm. The problem with that is our left-handed D side is stronger than our right-handed D side. You just gave up our best right-handed D for another left-handed D, meaning Kulikov and McCabe both get bumped down. Mm-hmm. And who's playing top line? Bogosian. Bogosian's often injured. And hopefully that trend stops this season. But if he is, then you got Franson playing that, or Nelson, who, he showed pretty well given, sheltered minutes, limited playing time, and he's still really young. And we have really nobody else that I think is ready to step into that role. So in my opinion, if we did have to trade Ristolainen, it would have to be for another right-handed D, or for a forward, or like a three-way trade, forward and D all involved. But I would not do Risto straight up for McDonough. So my thought for McDonough would be a combination of like Gergensons plus like Nelson plus a first rounder plus potentially even another pick like a Baptiste, a solid prospect, not a low-end prospect, a solid, goal-scoring prospect. He has a lot of tools, and he's on the cusp of being NHL ready. So that's kind of my thought to get McDonough. Gergensen's first, Nelson, or maybe even like a Will Borgen, and then Baptiste. What do you think? I mean, would you change anything of that? Would you change Gergensen's out for anybody?
I don't hate or disagree with that after your explanation.
Okay, cool. Well, let's move on to our last target, Jeff Skinner. So Jeff Skinner, interesting, right? So he came out flying his first year. He scored 30 goals, and I think it might have even been 30 assists. In his rookie year, he kind of had a sophomore slump. He came back this past season, scored close to 30 goals again, but he does have a $6 million cap hit. Carolina, to my understanding, they are a budget team. He's had some concussion issues, and they might be looking to be one of those teams that gets bigger, right? A lot of teams like that West Coast mentality, and for all we know, Carolina could be one of them. So to get Jeff Skinner, I think that we have to be looking at only giving up forwards, maybe a pick or prospect, but their D is stacked. They have one of the best D prospect pools in the entire NHL. So D, we should leave alone at this point in time. So from a forward-to-forward standpoint, throw in picks or prospects as you see fit. What do you think we would be giving up for Jeff Skinner?
I think we could give up, Gergensen's, Foligno. I think there's a lot of, I don't think that's enough, but I think that's a good starting point. But I understand we don't want to get rid of both of them. I would think maybe Evander Kane would fit that pool or that trade.
Now, I think with Kane, he has a ton of potential, similar age to Skinner, brings in more of that power forward mentality versus Skinner actually plays a pretty hard-nosed game, but he's not a power forward per se. He's more of like a, Sidney Crosby light, right? He's a playmaker who gets his nose in the dirty areas. He's not going to bowl anybody over with the frame that he has. So Kane, his off-ice issues, he's had a couple of injury concerns. I don't think Kane has the same value as Skinner, even though his contract, his cap hit is a little bit less. What do you think we would have to add to Kane to get Skinner, taking into account that Kane has some negatives in perceived value?
Well, I think we need to take Kane's previous years into consideration. He was on pace to score
25 this past season.
Yeah, I mean, he almost had, and has scored.
He scored 30. He scored like 19 in the shortened season or whatever. So he scores goals for sure, no doubt about it. But Skinner scores goals too, so we can't say that he doesn't.
Evander Kane has more of a rounded game. I mean, he's not afraid to go punch somebody in the face.
That's true.
He's not afraid to go up and check somebody. He's also not afraid to get hit.
But we'll play devil's advocate a little bit here. We have to think of this from the perspective of the Carolina GM. On paper, if we just got rid of off-ice issues altogether, Kane for Skinner straight up is a pretty close deal.
It's very close.
But with those issues accounted for, and we know, like a lot of people know, there's been rumors Buffalo wants to get rid of Kane. Whether or not that's true, I don't know what Tim Murray thinks, but whether or not that's true, it does affect his value. So right now, that GM for the Hurricanes, was it Ron Francis? Mm-hmm. He would not be willing to handle a player like Kane based on all these, allegations that have come up, whether they are or they're not true. So taken at his value right now, from the perspective of a Canes GM, what would you have to get from the Sabres in addition to Kane to make you want to give up Skinner?
I think we have to retain some salary here a little bit.
Okay.
I think if we retain a little bit,
like $1 million, because he's only contract for another 2 more years.
Yeah. So okay. Do like $1 million or $2 million.
Okay.
I think that'll help a little bit. I think we give up maybe one of our prospects. I think
it has to be a forward because they have a deep.
Yeah. As much as I wouldn't want to do this again, going back to probably getting blasted for this, but I think Kane and Bailey for Skinner straight up.
Kane and Bailey. Wow.
I don't want to do that though.
Wow. Yeah, that's a tough pill to swallow, especially with Bailey's potential.
I think Carolina might have to give us something in return for that. On top of that, maybe
Like Kane,
like a
Bailey,
pick.
and then Skinner in a second or something
Yeah.
coming back. That, you know,
But I like Bailey.
I like Bailey a lot.
Yeah.
I think he has a lot of room to grow.
So maybe instead, I think he could fill in Marcus Foligno as well. So maybe it might be better as Marcus Foligno or
You could sub in like a Baptiste instead of Bailey if you
Yeah.
like the game. I actually think both of them have a fairly solid game. Bailey just being a little bit further ahead in his development, but maybe Kane plus Baptiste for Skinner. Straight up, no pick coming back, or maybe like a third or a fourth, something low.
yeah.
All right, cool. Well, I'm good with all those. Want to hear your thoughts and feedback. I think there's some interesting ideas. Like I said, you might agree, you might not. If there's any players you'd like us to talk about targeting, we'd be more than willing to, because that's fun for us.
Yeah.
So
that's something to talk about next
yeah. So the last segment here that we'll get into is just a couple of questions moving forward for the season and how it's going to end. Okay, so that brings us to our next topic. Nick, do you believe that the Buffalo Sabres are a playoff team this year? And with that, I want to clarify, this is with the lineup they have today, not with Vesey. What are your thoughts? Are they a playoff team this year?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yep. Next question.
Okay. Well, why don't I give you a chance to elaborate on
I'll
that?
elaborate. Yeah. I think if you go back to our last podcast, talk about how the goals can Eichel and all them score.
And Okposo,
will add another
20,
25, I think. So I think there's no way they don't make the playoffs. I think we're going to get
barring injury concerns.
Barring injury concerns, as that bug sometimes bites you. I think Leonard's going to come out and prove that he's a number one goalie. He's got a lot to prove. Okay, so he's going to come out there and fight for it, and he's going to do it.
All right, perfect. So with that being said, right, I mean, everybody asked the question, are they a playoff team? I would say a lot of us are Buffalo biased, and typically speaking, we're going to say yes. Not everybody says that. Another contingent of Sabres fans are going to say, hey, we're another year away. And I agree with that in a sense. There's certainly some doubt whether or not we will or we won't. But I'm in the corner with Nick here. I feel that this year we will make the playoffs, barring an injury bug. I think we can sneak into a 7th or 8th pick. So next question is going to be, how deep can the Sabres go in the playoffs? I don't think that gets discussed often enough. Yeah, if we think we can make it, and we do, are we going to make it out of the first round? Because we're probably going to play a 1st or 2nd seed.
Yeah, I think it just depends on who we play in the first round.
It might be the Capitals, probably. It could be the Penguins. Those are probably the top 2. Maybe the Lightning. It's kind of up.
Don't the wild cards usually play each other, though? If we're in a wild card spot, I think they play each other, right? Yeah. I'm pretty sure
No, I thought it was 1 versus 8, but I could be completely off base. Let's not worry about that right now. Let's just type, and we don't know how the rest of the teams are going to finish in the standings anyway. So let's just go with this. We make it into the first round. We're against another competitive team, whoever they are. If they made it to the playoffs, they're a decent team. Yeah. And it's probably going to include some list of, Penguins, Capitals, Lightning, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Can we get out of the first round? Yes or no?
Yes. I think if we get the right matchup, I'm going to put my money down and say if we go against the Islanders, we beat them in the first round. That's just my opinion. If we go against the Penguins, I don't think so. So I think if we get the right matchup, I think we can get out of the first round.
Do you think you see us going any deeper than 1 round in? Like after winning the first round, we get to the second. Do you think we get any deeper than that this year?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think too, with it being such a long time that it's been since we made it to the playoffs, that our players are going to be amped up, especially against some of the teams that have been in and out. I bet you that if we make it to the playoffs, we will make it out of that first round and the second round. But to Nick's point, there's a lot of talent across the league, a lot more playoff season talent than what we have today.
Sure.
And I don't think we get past the second round. As much as I would love to see the Cup come home this upcoming season, I don't think it's in the cards, at least not this year.
I just think about 05-06 though too. I mean, we were supposed to finish last, and we made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. Right.
So the last question that we have, and we'll kind of end on this note, is going to be, the standings, right? So we think we're going to make the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
We think we'll make it to the first round and potentially get out of that first round.
Mm-hmm.
In the standings, do you see us finishing 8th, 7th? Do you see us squeezing out Boston for a spot, the Rangers for a spot? How do you think any of that shakes out? I think it would be too. But what are your thoughts? Not what you want, your goal, but what are your thoughts? Yeah.
So I think my thought is I think they go and they squeeze into one of the top 3 into the division. I think we go 3rd in the division.
In the division. Yeah. So what about the conference? Because there's going to be teams like New Jersey might be competing, considering they got Taylor freaking Hall.
Yeah.
Plus Schneider is literally like, if you look at any advanced stats metrics, he's like one of the top 3 goalies in the league. It's a lot less credit than he deserves. So I think New Jersey is going to be much more dangerous this year, having Taylor Hall on their offense.
Yeah, I think they'll be dangerous.
And the Flyers just made it in last year. I'm not sure how I feel about them. They have a ton of back end talent, but not sure how I feel about them making it this year. But they're certainly, and the Panthers are going to do awesome. I'm really expecting a big year out of the Panthers this year. So there's certainly going to be, teams that are making it. So from a conference-wide standpoint, where do you see us finishing? Do you think it's going to be that 7-8 spot?
No, I think it'll be like 5 or 6.
5 or 6? That's pretty high. It's a bold statement, right?
That's a very bold statement. Bold move, Cotton.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, right? That's awesome. So I think that kind of concludes our session here today. So we appreciate, everybody listening in. We'll continue to come out with these podcast sessions for Sabres Realm. If you're interested in joining one, we are more than welcome to do a live stream session and have somebody join us on the call here.
Sure. I'm just going to agree with us, though. No, we're up for whatever.
We're up for debate.
Yeah.
And then in addition, just want to once again thank Sabres Noise for, allowing us to do this and use their site as a medium for, putting this content out there for, our viewers. So, go Sabres. And I think you coined the catchphrase at the end of the last one.
Being jacked up?
Yeah, you're all jacked up. I thought it was sharpen your swords, right?
Oh, that's a Sabres catchphrase.
Yeah, the Sabres catchphrase.
All jacked up.
All right, perfect. Well, thanks again, everyone, and you guys take care.